Okay, welcome, William Boylan of the Acupuncture Clinic of Bedford. How are you?
I'm great, Jen. I'm glad to see you.
Glad
We're
to see you as
overdue
well.
for
It's been a
a
little
meetup.
while.
Yeah, yeah,
I was a patient of yours, and this is one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on today to chat with my network of people because having an experience with acupuncture, it was a really, really positive experience. I tell a lot of people about acupuncture, although I can only speak from my own experience. I can't say as much obviously as you would say about it, but it was really impactful for me in ways that I did not expect. So I'm excited to share you with my network. Will you tell us just a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do, that kind of thing?
for sure. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It's kind of cool to see you in this setting. And what I do, I specialize in acupuncture. I own the Acupuncture Clinic of Bedford. What we tend to focus on is more of the acupuncture component. Chinese medicine is this big, all encompassing system of health where you've got movement, you've got diet, you've got herbs, and you've got acupuncture in a nutshell. So I really leaned into just the acupuncture side of things. I've been in practice for 15 years. I worked at another group clinic for 7 years right out of graduate school. I've been on my own, I guess, for 8.5, 9 years now, and loving it. I take care of all kinds of different populations. But when you mentioned perimenopause and menopausal women, I was like, this is absolutely a topic I think we should bring up because they're pretty underserved and not really always understanding what acupuncture can do. And there's a lot of education that goes on when they come to my shop. So if we can alleviate some of that and speak to maybe some of the ways it can help, I think I'm all for it. Whether they end up with me or anywhere, this is a pitch for acupuncture in general, not just my shop.
Absolutely. And I feel like acupuncture and the conversations around menopause and perimenopause are actually, they blend really well because they're both very complex. So the changes and shifts happening in perimenopause and menopause are extremely complex. The experiences that people have are nuanced and complex. And I feel like similarly, acupuncture and what it does is pretty complex. It's like, so for example, when I came to you for the first time, I had really bad neck pain that was refractory to other treatments, meaning I had been to PT, I had taken anti-inflammatories, I had kind of done all those textbook Western medicine things, and I
Yep.
was not getting relief to the point where I had limited range of motion in my neck. Like I couldn't bend my neck to one side. And I was like, this is crazy, but I'm going to just try acupuncture. It's probably not going to hurt me. It's probably pretty safe.
I remember that being the vibe. Like, yeah,
But I have no idea why or how this would help. Something that I really appreciated about you was that I kind of walked into our consultation and I said that, like, I'm not sure. I think, like, I don't certainly don't know what this is as a Western healthcare provider. I certainly don't know how it works or purports to work. I'm not even sure how, like, I would think that it would start to work. And what I learned through the experience of having the acupuncture is that it's pretty complex. It wasn't just about you're going to stick needles in the part where it hurts. In fact, you never put needles where it hurt or where I had the issue with
yeah.
my they were lots of other different places. And you, I think, very quickly started bringing up things that I was not talking about but that were contributing to my issues. So, like stress level, history
Yeah.
of PTSD. I remember I think within the first consultation, you were like, sounds like you might have PTSD.
I may have phrased it that way. I've learned better ways to initiate that conversation, but
I
yeah,
was fine with it. And I was like, yeah, I actually do. And the acupuncture experience that I had was actually treating the stress and the symptoms of the PTSD completely outside the neck issue. But of course, they're probably all related. I'm
sure.
kind of talking in a flurry, but tell me a little bit more about these women who are experiencing lots of symptoms that seem kind of unrelated and like lots of people will feel like it's this just in my head what's going on? How does that dovetail with acupuncture?
What you just said at the end is almost always I hear a version of that. Women are coming and finding me, and it's almost like they have either not been listened to or they have an experience of having passed around different providers without answers. And a lot of people, at least that come to my clinic, have this sense of almost being somewhat diminished or not understood for what they're going through. And meanwhile, their body, their emotional state, their mental state is sometimes declining rapidly or changing rapidly with their endocrine system in flux. So a lot of times when you finally find your way to an acupuncturist, you've been through the gamut of so many practitioners, and it's sort of what you just said. It's like a Hail Mary where it's like, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do next. Please help me. And it's great when you can interact with somebody at that level. But acupuncture really shines as well if you can use it as a preventative maintenance too. We don't always like to, if we could call the fire department when the smoke starts versus when the house is blazing and on fire, you might have a better outcome, or there's less involved to try to get that fire to calm down. So that's usually that's been my interaction with this patient population is there's a lot going on, and we just have to sort through a lot of symptoms and kind of find, all right, where do we start? What are you feeling? What's a hormonal issue, and what is a symptom that's maybe come from the stress of trying to get to the root of this hormonal issue? And you just start pulling on threads and get to the root of what's going on. And it's challenging, but I find it so rewarding because if you can take a intensity level of 10 of a symptom and just turn it down a bit, it can be really life changing for someone. So
Yeah. And I bet a lot of what you do too is kind of intuitive listening. Like you're listening to what's the words, but you're also listening to everything else that's going on. And I think that that is not something that a lot of women get from their Western medicine providers. Actually, I think that's something that women get from me. I'm their Botox provider, right? But I was just commenting, like, you would be shocked at the amount of primary care that I do, or the
mm,
amount of like psychotherapy that I do, because I'm a much more, as a healthcare provider, I'm a much more intuitive listener than their OB/GYN, who is only allowed to have them for 15 minutes in the chair.
I think that's the root. So many docs are great docs, but they're under so much pressure to try to see someone. 15 minutes, I think, is generous in a typical Western medicine practice. They may have them for 5 minutes or less. So it's not a failing of the clinician or a failing of Western medicine. It's just people are so complex. They're a lot more than what their labs are. And you can report with normal labs and you feel horrible. So there can be other things going on. And to what you said earlier about your neck, everything is so connected. Your mental state, your emotional state, your physical state. And I think that's where Chinese medicine and acupuncture specifically can really shine, and sort of like putting the pieces together and be like, did you notice this other symptom? Well, this could be leading to that. Why don't we talk about that? And it's
Mhm.
very big on maybe trying to correct baseline things. Like I always look at like the bottom of the pyramid lifestyle stuff first. Like let's get that foundation of the pyramid as tightened up and dialed in as possible. And then no matter what other interventions you're having, if it's HRT or other types of medications, make sure that that baseline of your period, like your sleep, your mental state, your recovery, your mobility, make sure all that is in tune. And then you can build on that a lot easier than if you come in with like a crumbling, broken foundation. You can pour as much medication on top of that as you want. It's probably not going to have as good of an outcome. But
Yeah. So tell me more about what a patient experience looks like. I remember I came in, I made my appointment with you online, I think, and then we had a consultation. Did I get treatment the very first time I saw you? I don't remember.
always, for me, always the first day. Yeah.
Okay. But we had a long time to chat. So what is it like when somebody like books their very first appointment? So they're in that position. They're like, I don't know if this can help, but it's probably not going to hurt. So let's try it. And they book an appointment with you. What is it? What are they going to experience the first time they walk in the door?
I'm big on, my motto is simple, convenient, and effective. I've always found whether it's Western healthcare or in trying to seek alternative healthcare, is that there's always these barriers. You have to like read on the website, there's all this copy where you have to try to understand what this clinician is going to do. And then you call the office and no one picks up the phone, and then they have to call you back and schedule. It's too, by the time you get through to somebody, you're over it and you don't want to do it. So I'm glad to hear. I like people to, reach out to me if they have questions, but generally you book online. When you come in for a visit, I really like to slow things down. We're I guess a popular practice, but I'm not a busy practice. We're not looking to run people in and out the door. So as a new person, my goal is really to establish a relationship. It's not transactional. I've had people that have been with me for 15 years. And the only reason they're still coming to me is because we established a relationship first. We made sure we listened to what the needs were. Can I help? And we're very honest about what to expect out of treatment. And I think that type of framework, if you lay that at first, it's so much better to take the time and slow down and do that in the beginning. And it sets you up for a much longer path together. So whenever people come to see me, it's very chill and relaxed. But I assume that was your experience with, got very minimal paperwork. I come out and greet you. We're going to sit and have a talk for as long as we need to about what someone's specific symptoms are. In perimenopause and menopause specifically, that talk can take a little bit of time because usually there's a long story that's led up to how they're feeling. And then I always like to have a Q&A session. Like I've got my spiel of how I bring people up to speed on how the shop works. I like to tell them enough about acupuncture so they understand the process, but not bogged down in the details. But it's really about making sure the woman sitting in front of me is comfortable with treatment before we get started. So it's a very open-ended, tell me what's going on, and then do you have questions for me? Once we're set there, I like to go into how the process works. And generally people will get treated, or I shouldn't say generally, they get treated that first day. And then we'll talk a little bit about treatment plans if they're interested. But I really just want to get them, I guess, acclimated to what we're going to do, experience acupuncture for the first time, and then let them go home and kind of digest and process what they're feeling. And then I'll follow up in a day or two and we talk about, scheduling and kind of what makes sense for them going forward. It's a lot of information to process the first time. So we sort of give it step by step. Your first interaction with the clinic is really about feeling better and relaxing. You don't need to get bogged down and remembering too much. But
I remember one of the questions that I asked you during my consultation, which I felt a little guilty because I felt like it was a little bit of a hardball, but as a Western healthcare provider, I had to ask, like, how does this work? Like, can you explain it to me a little bit? What is the idea behind acupuncture? Because it was a little bit of a hard sell for me as a nurse, a
sure.
practitioner who's like, worked in cardiac surgery ICU. I work in operating rooms, like very kind of technical. I can see this hooks up to that. Can you explain a little bit about how acupuncture actually works?
Yeah, absolutely. The way I formulate it and the way I like to think about acupuncture is at a baseline, especially if you're coming at things from a Western standpoint. We all know what stress is and what stress feels like. So when you think about your body being stressed, there's going to be an elevation of stress hormones. I like to explain, everyone knows cortisol and adrenaline. Your cortisol and adrenaline goes up. When that happens, it means your body is in fight or flight mode. Sympathetic nervous system is activated. With acupuncture, if we can lower cortisol and adrenaline and get you more into rest and digest mode, your body then has the ability to do what it loves to do, which is maintain homeostasis, repair, recover, relax. So in a very basic, like, I guess it'd be macro level, looking like 10,000 feet, acupuncture is really lowering that fight or flight response in the body. And if you want to dig deeper into it, what happens with that are all these beautiful things, improving circulation, lowering inflammation, resetting some of the neural pathways in your brain to get out of this stressful mode into a de-stressful mode. And for perimenopause and menopause specifically, I think that's what's really helpful, because then you don't have all these bad stress hormones circulating and it's competing with your endocrine system and throwing everything way out of whack, worse than it needs to be. I also think, to your point, when you sit and chat with someone and you know that there's going to be relief based on a track record and clinical experience, you don't have to believe in acupuncture for it to work. It just works because of physiology. And there's also something I think very comforting coming to that when you say, listen, I've talked to someone in your case probably thousands of times. Here's what I expect the roadmap to be. Here's what I expect the outcome to be. It's disarming. You feel like you're finally at a place that hears what your symptoms are and that there's a path to get somewhere, instead of just feeling like you're treading water and you're drowning and you don't even know where to go next. So in a nutshell, that's my take on it.
I have to say that was exactly my experience too, was I came to you expecting in my brain, I'm going to go get acupuncture for this neck thing. You're going to stick needles in my neck. You did put needles, but not in my neck. And I remember you saying like, don't worry if you fall asleep, it's okay. And I was like, oh,
I get that all the time. Yeah.
I never fall asleep. I don't sleep in cars. I don't sleep
Yeah.
on airplanes. Like, I do not fall asleep. Like, don't worry, it won't happen. And I remember the first time I was like conked, like out.
Yeah. I got you visit number one.
I
You
was
fell
so
asleep. Yeah.
glad that it was like, I think it might have been 2020 or 2021 because we were wearing masks and my mouth was like hanging
Yep.
open. I may or may not have been snoring. I was completely conked. And I was like, what just happened? I was out like a light. So it very much was the experience
Yeah.
of de-stress in like 20 minutes.
And think about that, what you just described. That was in the most stressful time. We're all wearing things where we can't breathe. You're in a new environment that you don't know the sights and sounds, meeting a new guy explaining this new medicine. And for you, in your case, like you still happen to fall asleep. So that's like perfect like advertisement for like if it worked there, it's probably going to be for most people, they fall asleep within a visit or two. So that's a walking billboard right there.
Yeah. Now t share a little bit because something that I had not understood when came was that it's not like one and done. It's actually more of like time with the needle. What does a treatment protocol or like a little bit of a longer term experience look like for someone?
Yeah, good question. Most people, I feel, are really getting results around the 8 to 12 visit mark. That doesn't mean you won't see change at your first visit. You won't see differences in your pain level or your stress level or your energy level. But when I say results, I think about you're going to have a very good idea of what acupuncture is doing for you and what it can do for you. If you abandon treatment too early, sometimes what ends up happening, you'll get into a treatment protocol of 12 visits. And at visit number 4, someone feels like a completely different person. They then decide, okay, that's great. That cured my problem. You've really just taken like the tip of the iceberg down. And meanwhile, there's all this stuff beneath the surface. And generally, they'll feel great for a couple of weeks, but then they kind of have to restart the whole process. So I always think of acupuncture as you're unwinding something that probably took months to years to cause you to come into my office to sit and chat with me about it. So we always want to make sure we have a roadmap where you're giving yourself enough time to correct course. Like your lifestyle, your diet, your health, it's like a big ship, but it takes a really long time to turn that ship around and go in the opposite direction. You can't just like spin on a dime. It's not a race car. It's like a cruise ship. It's going to take a little while to reorient and start getting some momentum the other way. But in a very general sense, most conditions are showing a really big improvement around visit number 8 to 12. A lot of people will start 1 or 2 times a week. So we're looking at 4 to 6 weeks usually to have some data on what exactly is happening. And then a lot of times you can maintain benefits from that initial treatment strategy by coming in once or twice a month or as needed. You kind of know how good you feel and then you know when to reactivate. So that's a very general, for most patterns, that's what I'm recommending. If something's not showing any change after 12 visits, we really have to have a talk about, is there something else clinically going on? Are we heading down the wrong path? Or maybe, it's very rare that something all of a sudden, if you don't notice any difference, that you need to keep coming. You have a pretty good sense within that time frame, in my experience at least.
Okay, so 1 to 2 times a week for 1 to 2 months for an initial like getting the ball rolling. How long are the visits typically?
I always like when people rest with their needles in for 25 to 30 minutes whenever possible. Zero science behind that. That's purely anecdotal. We don't know why. They theorize, some people I talk to, once the needles are in, the effect has happened. I've based it on when people stay 25 or 30 minutes, they tend to get better. So I always ask that they do that. I say an average treatment is more like 40 to 45 by the time you come in and chat. And we've got to catch up about your life and your kids and all the other stuff that we care about too. We'll ask questions and get you comfortable. But if you need to, you can make this a part of your life without much time investment. It's usually the opposite end of things. People could stay indefinitely, like they're super chill and relaxed, but we have to turn over the room or the chairs at some point. But a good time window is that like 30 to 45-minute window.
Okay. I think I experienced that too because I would fall asleep.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah,
would
to you perceive it as like 5 minutes because
but it was a natural waking, like that 20-minute nap, right? Is your normal sleep cycle is typically a
yep.
20-minute nap midday. And that was very much what I saw myself. Like I didn't need to, you might have woken me up once or twice, but for the most part, I would take a snooze and then wake
Yeah.
up in 20 to 30-ish minutes. And it was like perfect.
People give this description. They use a term. They said they feel like they're cooked. They kind of just like wake up and they're like, I'm done. And they know what that feeling is over time. And then I start to learn, oh, she's probably a 30. I got to keep an eye on her. Like we learn each other, which is the other benefit, like your practice where it's small and you take care of the same people over and over again. It's relationship building. It's not just a transaction when it's coming to you for a service. You're like, oh, this is a close family member of the clinic. We kind of know what your needs are and we make sure we keep an eye on it so you don't have to.
And your clinic is just yourself, correct?
Just me, yeah.
Yeah. So
I have some
everybody knows they're
behind
going to
the
see you.
scenes,
If they come to the acupuncture clinic of Bedford, they're going to see you.
100%. Let's say I have some behind the scenes, some admin help I'll have occasionally, but I'm very big on, when you call the shop, when you interact, continuation of care to me is the best way to practice the type of medicine that I do. So yeah, you're always going to be seeing me when you're there.
What are the biggest like misconceptions or things that people say coming in that have held them back from seeking acupuncture?
That's a really good question. I think people are scared of the word needle because they think of hypodermic syringe, or they think of injection, or they think of getting a flu shot. The acupuncture needles that we use, the gauge is so fine, you can actually fit sometimes one or two of those into the hole in a syringe. So I think sometimes people have an ick around the word needle, or they're worried that once they see the needle that it's going to hurt. That's a big barrier. Once you come in and get treated, you realize they go a couple of millimeters into the skin. There should be no pain or discomfort with anything that we do at the shop. Another big thing, I think TV and movies, it's good that they expose people to the idea of acupuncture. But if you think in your head right now of acupuncture in a movie, like what's the image that pops up? I
I
don't
get
mean to put you on the spot, but
needles all over your face or like all over your back.
okay.
Yeah.
It's always like a million needles in your face, which we don't do. Again, I'm not a facial acupuncture clinic. There's a tool and a reason to do that. That's not what I practice. Or it's exactly what you just said, needles covering your entire back where you look like a porcupine. And then I think for things to show up on TV, they use these big, thick looking needles so that you can like catch it with the camera. We're using between maybe 8 to 12 needles total for most visits. We don't needle the face. So it's a very scary thing. If I didn't get acupuncture and I saw that on TV and that was all I thought it was, I think that would steer me away too. So
I
that's my
think
big thing with educating people. Like it's not going to be like how you see on TV.
isn't there a vignette in the most recent Minions movie where like the sensei lady is like a
Yes.
she's
Yep.
doing massage and then she's got the guy and he's got all the needles and then the minions are falling all over.
Yep. There's one I'm dating myself because my kids are older. I was watching all the Pixar movies a couple of years ago, but Kung Fu Panda has a scene where and then you get paralyzed. And I'm like, this is horrible for the whole, but they're just a couple of millimeters into the skin. Everything's, single use needles. I get asked that a lot. Single use pre-sterilized disposable needles. I think those are really some of the initial barriers. And then some people feel like they have to have, I touched on earlier, a belief in acupuncture or some connection to esoteric or mystical knowledge to have this work. Like they have to understand fully the Chinese medicine mechanism, or you don't at all. I love people that are skeptical and don't believe in it because they come in and we get results. But you don't need to. I'm happy to have that conversation with someone. But you don't need to understand anything about what's going on from a Chinese medicine perspective to receive the benefits of acupuncture. And then lastly, I really feel like people have this pressure on themselves when they come in that they have to fall asleep, or they have to hit this meditative state, or they have to be relaxed while they're there. And that can feel really more stressful. If you're not someone that's good at that, you may not want to sign up for acupuncture if you think you have to force yourself to do so. And really, I tell people, as long as you're warm enough and you're comfortable in the chair, I'd love it if you fall asleep. I'd love it if you're relaxed, but it doesn't matter to the outcome of the treatment. You just come in and get your dosage of the medicine, and it's going to have its effect after you're here over time. It's a cumulative effect. So you don't have to do anything. You just show up.
I have to say that was actually really freeing for me the very first time I came in for a visit because w again, walking in, not knowing what to expect, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna sit here for 20 minutes. I'm gonna go crazy. I'm a runner. My brain is
Yeah.
constantly running, and I've got a lot of stuff going on. I've got kids at home. I run my own businesses. And I was like, what am I think I asked you, like, what am I allowed to do here? And you were like, you can scroll on your phone if you want. And it was so freeing.
It's nice.
It was freeing for you to say that. I think I tried to scroll on my phone for like 5 minutes, and then I was like, I don't, I just put it down and then I was asleep. But what I appreciated so much was that I did not feel pressured to be like some sort of specific type of patient for you.
Mm.
You gave me the freedom. You weren't judging me for being on my phone. Like I was wasting time or opportunity or something. You were like, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. It was very freeing, honestly.
I'm glad to hear that. Plus, well, especially the patient population we're talking about, but in general, there's so much pressure to do everything right. It's like I have to eat the all organic, 100% perfect diet all the time. I have to train twice a day. I've got to get my 20,000. Like those are all good things to do, but it's so much weight that people are carrying around with them all day. And sometimes all you need to do is just check out. Like your body knows what to do. It regulates everything 24/7. That's what I try to tell patients too. It wants to keep you happy and healthy and alive. It regulates your breathing. It tells you when you're hungry, tells you when to go to bed. You just have to listen to it. And sometimes you just take some of that pressure off and give it the space to do what it needs to do, like big things can happen. So I'm glad to hear that was
Yeah, I think if you hadn't said that, I would have not looked at my phone because I would have thought I shouldn't. And then I would have been in my head about like, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? But actually you saying like, go ahead and look on, scroll on your phone if that's what you want to do, that's totally fine. It gave me the freedom to choose to not. And then I had a better experience than I think I would have if I was like trying to be the right patient. I don't know. Yeah.
Mental judo I threw at you there.
Yeah. Like, what's it called? Reverse psychology. Go
Yeah.
look at your phone. Well, what are some things that people could seek help with acupuncture for that they're not? What are some surprising things? We talk generally about menopause and perimenopause, but I remember you listing lots of things to me that acupuncture can help with that I think people would not expect.
It falls under a little bit where I talked about stress and like the endocrine system and fight or flight, but really like mood and emotional regulation. I think these things are so tied into how we feel. And a further branch off of that would be sleep. So when any one of those things is disordered, it's almost like a wheel where it's going to feed into the other, and it's this like endless cycle. So I really feel like that's an underutilized thing. People sometimes conceptualize acupuncture as fix this problem. Like I got my readings, and my estradiol was high or my estrogen was low. I'm on hormone replacement therapy. Can you fix it? Or I've got this frozen shoulder now that my hormones have shifted and I can't lift above. Can you fix it? And yes, we can have interventions and try to help with that. But sometimes I'm not feeling well. I'm not feeling myself. Something feels off. I'm not sure. I'm feeling burdened or overloaded or too much stimulation. I think sometimes just coming in for acupuncture for those reasons before something balloons into a big problem is really, really helpful. So I wish more people would think about it in that way. Chinese medicine is very preventative. There's a saying, and I always butcher it. I don't know exactly what it is, but they have a phrase that's before the rains, prepare the cloth. So you want to try to like sew up all the holes in your tent. You want to fix everything before there's a downpour of weather, because it's really hard when you're under a deluge of water to sit there and try to fix problems that are already existing. So if you can prevent them ahead of time, then you can wait out these really tough periods in life, because your baseline level of stress and not feeling well is much more managed and even keel. So I always try to pitch that to people. It's a preventative. It can help you feel better, even if you don't quote unquote have something wrong with you. I try to tell patients there's nothing wrong with you. You're experiencing a pattern of symptoms right now. You're not broken. If it's raining outside, you would say it's raining on me. You don't say I'm raining. I'm experiencing rain right now. I am not rain. So that's kind of how I try to preventative.
Yeah, that's really fascinating and I think maybe deeper than it sounds at first glance because we talk, 2025, everybody's constantly talking about self-care, right? And I remember especially as a new mom, maybe 10 years ago, being so frustrated with this idea of self-care because people would be like, you need to do self-care, go get a massage. And I felt very strongly that the massage was not in no way caring for me. I had to get a babysitter, then I had to leave. I had to figure out when I was going to pump if I wasn't breastfeeding, while I
Mm.
was getting the massage. And then I was relaxed for the period of the massage, but it did nothing to help me and I grappled a little bit with what is self-care. And I think a lot of women experience that at different periods in their lives, whether it's being a new mom or maybe being a mom whose kids are getting older that don't need quite as much continuous care. Okay, now I'm ready to have self-care. What does that look like? I think it's really enlightening to think of acupuncture as a form of like maintenance or self-care that is very compounding and actually going more so than just the like my muscles feel better if I get a massage, but really I'm kind of training my parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calm, relaxed and
Yep.
my nervous system. I'm training that so that when I do have a stressful event, I can be better at I'm going to go to sleep and go to bed anyway. I'm still going to be able to go to bed even though I have
Yeah.
a stressful event in my life or something.
I think you just nailed it. I think the brain is very plastic, and it does learn, like those grooves get very well worn. If you've had a stressful life or stressful circumstances, it's much easier for you to go towards that agitated, stressed out, really worked up response when the kids do spill the milk. I have four kiddos. When they spill the milk, when someone's late, when they break the thing, your brain is like, oh, okay, we're learning that. But like to your point, if you can kind of train your body to not always go that way. It's sometimes you'll be like, oh, I can divert. And people tell me a lot of times they feel like things roll off their back a little easier. Is that because of acupuncture? And I would say, I can't say for sure that it is, but if that's the only thing that we've changed, and things that used to trigger you up to a level 10 out of a 10 are now getting you to a 4 out of a 10, and you have space to take a breath and walk away from your teenager that maybe is not reacting to your conversation the way you want instead of escalating, I think that's super valuable too, because it goes back to the circle of it's not feeding your stress response, and then that's helping. It's like the big picture. It's yeah,
Yeah. Gosh. Speaking of kids, you treat kids in your office as well, right?
I do.
What kinds of indications are there in children and teens for acupuncture?
It's almost always kids that experience anxiety and then that connection with their digestion. There's we know in Western medicine the gut brain barrier inflammation, how that can affect so many different things. But I almost always see if someone's searching me for acupuncture, it seems to be this triad of a kiddo who is very highly emotional intelligent for their age. That's almost always what the parents say, like more mature than they need to be, highly emotional intelligent, can take on complex problems of adulthood, but they're not an adult yet. And then they experience anxiety, and then that leads to their gut not feeling really well. And then that kind of is this reinforcing triad. So for them, the process is the same. We want to just lower that fight or flight response. We want to get their body out of that activated state and see if we can maybe regulate their sleep, maybe give them a place to unplug and be a little bit quiet and let their body do what it knows how to do, because they're so healthy. They respond so much quicker than adults. Like they're closer to the source. We look at it as we call it their chi or their energy, but they do not take much acupuncture to correct course because the problem hasn't been going on for 30 or 40 years. They're usually adolescent. So that's typically who ends up at my clinic. I know a lot of kiddos can be treated for all kinds of things like allergies, sleep problems, bedwetting. Sometimes you'll see sports injuries, but those things aren't as common for kiddos at my particular practice, but those are all great reasons to bring an adolescent or a kid in. And I always get asked, like, what's the earliest age? And it really depends on that child. In my clinic, the rule is if the kid is on board with being treated and doesn't feel like they're forced to be there and can sit quietly with a parent for 15, 20, 25 minutes, then we're good to go. But if acupuncture could fix a lot of their problems and they're not on board with a session, it's not the right time to have them start. So there's no minimum age, but it's really up to whether the kiddo wants to be there.
How do they do with the needles?
Just
Just
fine.
have a
We have
needle.
smaller gauge, smaller size needles. Kids are more fidgety than adults. So what I like to do, you can put a needle at a oblique, I guess that'd be an oblique angle to the skin instead of straight up and down. And you put a little medical tape over it so it doesn't fall out. So if they have to fidget or they have an iPad or they're moving around, needles aren't going to fall out. They're not going to poke them. It's not painful. That's a little hack that I do, but I've treated plenty of people without doing that, plenty of kids, and they're fine. They're just mini adults.
You're very zen. I imagine you don't, the kids probably respond pretty well to you. I'm trying to think if my kids would tolerate the idea. I probably wouldn't tell them, well, like, okay, if let's say a mom is listening, has a neuroatypical child and who has a little bit of sleep disorder, maybe a little bit of constipation, and she's like, this is interesting. I'd like to try this instead of giving my kid Miralax every single day. Um, what should I say to my kid that we're gonna go? We're gonna go see my friend, Dr. William. What should I tell her about it? Because I'm not sure I want to tell her we're gonna go stick needles all over her body.
It's a good point. With kids, even though we do needle them, I don't like to say we never needle children. There's other tools that you can use on acupuncture points that don't involve needles. So sometimes like when you go to massage, we can do cupping therapy along spots along the back, which is really calming for the nervous system. I wish I had something to show you, but they have little transdermal, they use the word needle, but it's almost like an acupressure point. It's a little piece of metal with a protective coating over it. And you place those at acupuncture points on the body, and then you send the kiddo home with them and they learn to self-massage and press on these points themselves. So if someone's really apprehensive about the idea or the word needle, but they do want to come in, that's usually where we'll start. I tell every kid, you're not going to be forced to do anything that you don't want to do. So you can agree to acupuncture in principle, and then sometimes you get to the office and it's a different story. It doesn't matter if we're there with both parents. I looked the kiddo right in the eye where I was like, listen, buddy, whatever, whichever kiddo it is, like, you're in charge of this session. If at any point we get to something that you're like, we're done, this is where we stop, we stop there, because the last thing you want is for someone to be exposed to something that could be so helpful for them, and then it turns into a fear-based reaction, and then they may never go back and experience that as an adult. But I get sorry, I rambled. To answer your question, what I usually say is, if you go to acupuncture as a kid, they don't necessarily have to needle you. There's a lot of things they can do to help with your symptoms before we get to that point. And we can always build to that if we need to. But kids are extremely resilient. They respond so quickly to treatment. We've had plenty of kiddos that just end up getting cupping and acupressure, and they have good results too. So I'm just get them in the door.
And
And
what does
I'm
the result look like for that child? Like, I'm thinking bowel regularity, improved sleep, improved mood. Like, what am I expecting to see?
a lot of these patterns present a lot during adolescence and puberty. So a lot of these interventions you're doing, my understanding is they're going to grow out of many of them anyways. So you're really easing that transition period until their body takes over, and maybe they're going to have an easing of symptoms on their own. But generally, it's like I said before, lowering the intensity. If their symptoms are a 10 out of a 10, I've had a young man, he came, I want to say in the last 6 months, he was experiencing bedwetting. No known cause. We determined it may have been a stress response and anxiety. It was happening every single evening. He came in for acupuncture quite a bit, but they got him to a point where he was maybe, again, it's subjective, but 4 or 5 intensity level scale where he's not wetting the bed every single night. And for him, that built into confidence where he's then not stressed going to bed. And they didn't need to continue doing acupuncture. Things kind of spaced out where he wasn't having that symptom all the time. And I haven't followed up recently. We kind of decided mutually, like, okay, I think we've gone as far as we can with acupuncture. Circle back in if you need me. But he'd experienced over a couple of months really significant improvements. And then the hope is that person can then go on and live their lifestyle. And now they know, all right, acupuncture is a tool. I can bring my kiddo back in if this gets out of hand again. There's confidence and trust built in. But there's no direct path. We know exactly how anyone's going to respond. It's like anything. Your body could have a really good result. Sometimes you end up treating any pattern and there's no change. That's a possibility too. But more often than not, you're going to see something.
What an exciting thing to think about though, when because myself and so many other parents, especially moms who are typically the ones dealing with these kind of socio-emotional or even medical needs of a child, when we go to our pediatricians, there are medications they give kids for bedwetting, like an oral medication, which is fine. I'm sure it's very safe and very well studied, but
Yeah.
they're never without some level of risk. Um, and so what a gift to be like there might be this non-medication, non-systemic kind of overall helpful thing you can try. I
Mm.
think that's like a gift. Jeez. I hope more people will try it because it's not going to hurt you.
No, and I think being collaborative with, sometimes you have to be on a medication, and specifically for perimenopause and menopause. But if we can alleviate some of the symptoms that you're going to experience while under the care of a really smart physician who has everything dialed in the way you need to, and then you're better able to stick with that medication that's actually helping you and mitigate some of the side effects. I'm very happy with acupuncture playing that role too.
Mhm. That's amazing. What's something we haven't touched on about acupuncture or your practice that we should be talking about?
I was going to ask you, I don't know if you run into this. It's an interesting concept, where people want to look good and feel good. Do you run into this idea of, I shouldn't do this because it's not natural?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I'm
I
toying.
have
I'm
such a
saying,
hump for Botox.
is it? I,
The
I wasn't sure if
toxin.
you. Go ahead.
It's a toxin. They'll be like, oh, it's so bad, or I'm so vain. People really, I shouldn't want to do this because it must mean that I'm vain, which I patently disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
99% of the time, certainly there are people that have disordered relationships with their appearance. That certainly is a thing, but for the vast majority of the population, that is not the case. Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of people that have big humps to get over for everything that I do. I
I've
also see that a lot with the GLPs, helping
okay.
people lose weight. Perimenopause and menopause women, their biology is set up to pack on abdominal fat, which is really bad for a lot of people's self-esteem, but it's also really bad metabolically. It sets you up for diabetes, hypertension, heart disease. And they have this like, I'm cheating if I take a GLP. many of my patients for whom I prescribe GLPs are already lifting weights 5 times a week. Sometimes they're working out so much that I'm telling them, I think this, I don't think this is sustainable.
Mm.
This is probably not healthy for you to work out 6 days a week. And, then we got to think about your cortisol level too, if
Yep.
you're this stressed about it. Or they're under eating, they're malnourished, they're not eating enough nutrients, let alone protein or calories in general. So giving them the GLP is this beautiful little thing that helps people's body work more harmoniously. And then not only do they have I feel better about myself, but I actually also physically feel better in
Yep.
general, and you're metabolically healthier. So yeah, everything that I do, people have that, should I be doing this for any number of reasons?
How do you handle that conversation? Is it kind of laying out the benefits of doing so? Like,
Yeah, for me and my patient population, very much like you, it's very relationship based. So everything is based on the unique person sitting in front of me. I'm usually talking about them, about their story. So I've already asked them, like, what have you tried already? Tell me more about your story. And then I'm going to specifically address the concern that they have as it relates to their story, because people are very different. And so let's give the GLP example. So things like Ozempic and Mounjaro, there's lots of people in the world who are taking a GLP who have significant metabolic and medical problems. But those are not my patient population. My patient population are pretty healthy peri and postmenopausal women who are already very active. They're hiking, they're lifting weights. They know what a well-balanced, nutritious diet looks like, and they are doing that. They also want to have an ice cream every once in a while with their kids, which is, I think, very healthy. Um, so when they're saying, like, I don't know, should I do this? I try to help them see the larger picture, and we walk through, which is actually a very Western medicine thing to do, a risk benefit analysis. So how likely are the risks, and how bad are the risks? And then how likely are the benefits, and how important are the benefits? And we kind of talk through for each individual person. For a lot of people, I'm looking at them and I'm saying the likelihood that you're going to have a complication from this treatment is exceedingly small. And
mm,
here are the potential benefits. You are going to feel better. You're in your body. You're going to feel more
yeah,
confident. You're going to bring this light into the world. Um, because you feel better about yourself. You're also going to feel better physically, feel less sluggish, more energetic, which is part of what GLPs do for people. And then you're also going to reduce your metabolic risk, things like diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease, which is a
mm.
very real thing for peri and postmenopausal women. So I try to kind of be really practical and not, you can't really argue with a risk benefit analysis. That's how I tend to handle it. How do you handle that?
It's so interesting. What I've found is people are sort of expecting as an alternative medicine practitioner that I'm going to be very anti anything, not natural or not Western. And I have this conversation that comes up a lot where nothing is natural anymore. So I feel like we hold this idea, there's almost like a lot of shame around the idea that you may need hormone replacement therapy, or you may want to improve your appearance, or if you have PTSD, there's this shame where I've got to like pull myself up by my bootstraps and I've got to do all the things and fix this. And or if this intervention could help, I'm not going to do it because it's not natural. And when I talk to people, I always frame it as, do you go out and hunt your food every single morning? Do you start a fire in your home every single day for heat? Do you walk to work? No. Like, did you make your clothes? No. None of us live in a natural way. We can try to be as natural and as healthy as possible based on what we know is good for the human body and human lifestyle. But I think freeing ourselves from this idea of everything has to be natural is a really, really good first step. Because think about if you know, need a hormonal intervention, acupuncture can get you so far, but it may not be enough to correct and make you feel your best. To your point, you should be out sharing your love and your light to the world. Why would you not want to be optimally functioning and feeling good and living every single day to the best of your ability? So, sort of getting over that hump of, no, I'm only going to do this with alternative medicine. I'm only going to do this with, $2,000 worth of herbs and supplements that are also not natural as well. And that's, I'm pro herbs, I'm pro alternative. There's so many different ways you could go, but there seems to be a hang up where people haven't done the, I guess, philosophical conclusion of the statement. That's the thing about that. They have to be natural. I definitely can't intervene in any other way. And I'm like, it's your life, it's your body. You should try to be as healthy and happy as possible. And I think, like, you're to your point, weigh out the risks, see if something doesn't agree with you philosophically and you want to go about it naturally, that's beautiful. But if you don't necessarily feel like that's the case and you're open to trying other things, I think a collaboration between natural things that I do with other things that people deem not natural is really the way to go. I think you need a good team behind you. I think you need people that know what they're talking about. I think you need the right information to make decisions based on you and your lifestyle and not be hung up on what society tells you is natural versus not natural. It's just a very, it's an interesting talk that I have a lot. And after I have that, people are usually kind of like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'll think about that. And then if, they get another team behind them and their
And
outcome
the
better.
other thing that I tell people a lot is like, you're also not married to it. You can
Yeah,
stop taking it anytime. Like, they're like, I don't know, should I try HRT? I'm like, I'm pretty pro HRT. The research, of course, I talk like that language. The research is
sure.
strong. It helps women, it helps them be healthier, it reduces cancers, reduces UTIs, reduces death, it reduces broken bones. I mean, I'm
Mm.
pretty pro HRT. People really worry about it. And I'm like, you're not married to it. Like, if you want to try it and see if it helps you. I mean, give it time to work, obviously, but you get to decide what you want to do. You get to decide what's right for you at any time with the information that you have available. So you can decide to stop. I say that about Botox. I say that about HRT. I say that about the GLPs. People worry a lot about, do I have to be on this GLP forever? I'm like, no, you can do whatever you want to do. Though also, I think there's the opposite and side of the coin of what you were just talking about of like doing things that are not natural. I think there's also a group of people who, and I might sometimes fit into this category, who are so go, 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 and they're so busy that I'm like, can you just give me a pill? Can we just fix
Sure. Yeah.
this?
Fix it.
You know? And sometimes I think people think that about HRT and that it doesn't always fix everything because, again, the menopause transition, and not just even the menopause transition, but being a 40 to 50-year-old woman is
Yes.
extremely complex period in life where, yes, I have this hormonal shift happening, but I also, my children are suddenly not toddlers anymore, and I have to teach them how to go through puberty in a world with social media. And my parents might even be getting to an age where I need to start taking care of them, which is an issue for
Yes.
a lot of my patient population. I'm trying to decide where am I going in my career. It's an extremely complex time, and I think that potentially thinking that HRT is going to fix everything might be a little dream world.
Yeah. It's a balancing act for sure. Even when you were just saying about, should I take this, should I not take that, and expecting it to fix. My friends, Dr. John and Dr. Brooke, they're chiropractors, but they have this saying, you also don't have an ibuprofen deficiency. So if you're relying on these things day to day, that you're not getting to the root of the problem. So we don't want to have like a medication or something we're taking be a be all end all fix all. But I think helping people like smooth out that rough transition at this phase of their life, if you need some support in another area, I would wish that was less stigmatized, and it's okay. Like, to your point, if you want to try something, you're not down that path forever. It doesn't mean that you're beholden to that method of thinking. In light of new information, you can change. What you were saying, we're all learning so much about mitochondrial health and aging and maintaining muscle mass, and I think we're really figuring things out in a way that the generation prior to didn't know about. But we have this like deluge of information now where we're seeing like where the river is headed, and we're like, what do we do? We have all this stuff we're trying to like fix, and it's a lot to digest and take in. So like you said, you can always correct course.
Yeah. Well, William, it's been so fun chatting with you. Thank you so much for coming and just sharing your expertise and knowledge with my my friends. Where can people? You're at the Acupuncture Clinic of Bedford, which is on River Road by behind T-Bones, right?
Yep. We're
Where
in
can they
Bedford
find
Commons
you?
Office Park, right
Okay.
off South River. Yep.
Where can they find you online to make appointments and that type of thing?
www.acupunctureclinicofbedford.com. Acupuncture spelled with one C, ACU. We're also on Instagram at Acupuncture Clinic of Bedford. And you can reach us 603-488-5675. I'm pretty quick to respond to inquiries and questions. And even if you're not in the area, I'm a big proponent of acupuncture as a really useful tool. We have so many good practitioners in and around this area. So even if it's not with me, if you've got questions, I want to get linked up with someone, I'm very big on trying to help make that connection happen. So just reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was good.
All right.
Appreciate you.